22 people murdered and many more injured in a barbaric terror attack in Manchester.
Oh my God.
A suicide bomber detonated his device packed with metal as thousands of people left the Manchester arena.
My ears started ringing. I thought, what's that? And sort of looked back where the explosion was, and there were people laid out on the floor.
A teenage fan of the pop star Ariana Grande who was performing, and an 8-year-old girl among the victims. I'm live in Manchester where a huge police operation is underway. Homes linked to the bomber are raided as he's named as British-born Salman Abedi. Tonight, as a huge vigil takes place, community leaders join the Prime Minister in condemning the attack.
It is an absolutely barbaric attack that has taken place. To cut off young lives in this way, I mean, it is absolutely devastating, and our thoughts and prayers must be with their families and friends.
From Manchester, this is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening from Manchester, a city mourning last night's terrorist atrocity, the worst in Britain since 2005. 22 innocent people lost their lives here, including a girl aged just 8. The suicide bomber struck when the music stopped, just as crowds of young Ariana Grande fans and their families were making their way home. Theresa May said it was a sickening and cowardly attack. The Queen described it as an act of barbarity. This is the scene tonight in nearby Albert Square, where thousands of people are attending a vigil to show that this city will not be defeated. In a moment, we'll have the latest on the victims and the investigation. But first, our correspondent Martin Geisler reports on the Manchester terror attack.
The Manchester Arena was packed to capacity last night. Young people buzzing with excitement as Ariana Grande performed. But just moments after the singer left the stage, this.
Oh my God. What's going on? What just happened?
First, there was confusion.
What's going on?
Then panic.
Oh my God! What's going on?
Screaming, terrified, they clambered to escape. Parents who'd come to collect their children looked on as the crowd fled the arena. The bomber Salman Abedi had targeted the main foyer, detonating his device as the concert ended, with people flooding towards him, ensuring maximum impact on an innocent crowd.
Quick, Corey! Which way? Come on!
Ariana Grande draws a young audience. This carnage was inflicted on children and teenagers and families on a special night out.
My ears started ringing. I thought, what's that? And sort of looked back where the explosion was, and there were people laid out on the floor. Turned around to look at my wife to see if she were all right, and she said, no, I need to lay down. So I laid her down on the floor, and I've laid her there with her, and I looked at my foot and saw that, yeah, my foot's got a gash in the foot. But I'm more concerned about my wife because she's got a stomach wound, a leg wound. They think she's broken her femur.
Everybody started screaming and scattering out, and me and my daughter was on the stairs, and somebody started climbing on top of her and climbing on top of us, and I had to pull her out by her arm and run out of the building, and that's all I heard.
The emergency services were quick to the scene, a huge fleet of ambulances to deal with dozens of wounded, some with life-threatening injuries. As survivors consoled each other outside, teams of armed police approached the arena, but Abedi had killed himself, along with so many others. The details of his victims are beginning to emerge. 18-year-old Georgina Callender a huge fan of Ariana Grande. She'd met the singer. And Safi Rose Roussos, just 8 years old. Theresa May paid tribute to the victims today and issued this defiant message on behalf of the country.
The cowardice of the attacker met the bravery of the emergency services and the people of Manchester. The attempt to divide us met countless acts of kindness that brought people closer together. And in the days ahead, those must be the things we remember.
From Downing Street, the Prime Minister travelled to Manchester, paying a private visit to some of the injured in hospital. But first, a meeting with senior officers at Greater Manchester Police.
I've been talking to the police about the investigation that is continuing, and they and the security services are working, obviously, to identify whether there was a wider group of people involved.
Manchester's new mayor, Andy Burnham, spoke for the city.
After our darkest of nights, Manchester is today waking up to the most difficult of dawns. It is hard to believe what has happened here in the last few hours and to put into words the shock, anger and hurt that we feel today. These were children, young people and their families that those responsible chose to terrorise and kill. This was an evil act. We are grieving today, but we are strong. Today it will be business as usual as far as possible in our great city.
But words, however well-intentioned, can only go so far. This city was on edge today. There was a moment of panic as the Arndale Centre was evacuated briefly. Terrified shoppers calling friends to confirm they were okay.
We've just brought the Arndale. We was in the Arndale and then just everybody started running.
How are you feeling today?
Oh, how can you imagine? Can you imagine? I'm absolutely terrified. It's just not what I'll be in the city centre at the moment.
I feel sad again that, you know, I'm starting to look at people differently and question people's motives, and yeah, it's just a bit uneasy.
But Manchester has a proud history of solidarity and defiance. One appalling moment of cruelty may have broken the city's heart, but its spirit will come through this even stronger. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Manchester.
It's the age of those targeted in the attack that's made it so particularly abhorrent. Thousands of children and young people were caught up in the horror. In the chaos, many were separated from their parents and friends who searched for them, many throughout the night. Some did not make it home. Emma Murphy reports now on the victims and those still missing.
A beautiful little girl in every sense of the word. What joy that description would bring to Safi Rose Roussos' family in any other situation. But at 8 years old, she is dead, and those who knew the joy of her smile are reduced to leaving flowers in her memory.
Everyone has been quiet and like sad.
Really sad.
Yeah.
It's horrible, isn't it? She's only 8 as well. It's awful. Really, really awful.
Murdered too, 18-year-old Georgina Bethany Callender. She was studying health and social care and wanted to look after people. She was killed by someone who sought to destroy life rather than cherish it. She'd met her idol Ariana Grande before. Imagine her excitement to be in her audience once more. At 28, John Atkinson was one of the older victims. Described as a beautiful soul, he was walking out of the arena when he was caught in the blast.
I just want to home. I just want to back in my arms.
For some, the agony is in the not knowing. Charlotte Hardy last heard from her daughter Olivia at 8:30 last night. She has no idea where the 15-year-old is now.
I'm lost. She's not been found. She's not anywhere. Everyone's saying she's not there. Every hospital I'm phoning, hotels that people are saying kids are at, and she's just not anywhere.
What goes through your mind when you sit here and wait?
Everything. Where is she? Is she alive? Is she looking for me? And she can't get to me. Is she on her own somewhere and no one's found her? Just everything.
Family members have resorted to walking around hospitals in the hope of finding Olivia, whilst others missing friends and relatives have turned to social media as they try to make sense of what has gone on. Liam Curry and his girlfriend Chloe Rutherford are also missing.
So to attack kids, to me it's a heinous crime. It's the lowest of the low.
These young faces are just some of those Salman Abedi would have seen before he detonated his explosives, choosing to kill, maim and tear into young lives. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Manchester.
Police are still piecing together the events that led up to last night's terrible attack. Here is what we know so far. The bombing happened in the foyer of the Manchester Arena, close to the city's Victoria train station. The Ariana Grande concert finished just after 10:30 p.m. and 21,000 fans were making their way out through the 4 main exits. Suicide bomber Salman Abedi detonated his device at the exit closest to the station, a public area where many parents were waiting to meet their children. Witnesses say nuts and bolts were strewn right across the floor, suggesting that a nail bomb may have been used in the attack. Those inside have described the stampede after the attack as thousands scrambled to escape. Nearby Victoria Station was immediately shut down and the surrounding streets cordoned off as the injured were taken to hospitals right across Greater Manchester. A major police investigation is now underway into how the suicide bomber planned and executed his attack. He's been named as Salman Abedi, a 22-year-old born in Britain to Libyan parents. So-called Islamic State said it was behind it, although, important to say, no link has been confirmed so far. One man was arrested today as police carried out raids on addresses in the city and carried out a controlled explosion. Our security editor Rohit Khatri has the latest on the investigation.
With their investigation 12 hours old, the first police raid. Officers inch back, then forward.
It's the army as well, that.
Not the army, but an armed specialist unit, their defensive clothing judged to be appropriate for this operation. This is where the attacker's family lived.
Just for your personal safety, you might want to take a few steps back.
And nearby, a 23-year-old man was arrested following another raid. This afternoon, police were still investigating the attacker's home, withholding his name as they tried to buy a little time to understand more about who he was.
They just come and go during the night. A couple of years ago they moved in during the night and then they left again and come back again.
But tonight, police revealed his identity, making clear that their most pressing questions are not about what he did, but whether he had support.
I can confirm that the man suspected of carrying out last night's atrocity is 22-year-old Salman Abedi. Our priority, along with the police counter-terrorist network and our security partners, is to continue to establish whether he was acting alone or working as part of a wider network.
Today, Islamic State group said it was responsible, and rarely are such claims entirely opportunistic. Last night, it might have created a British Bataclan, another European city targeted, adding the name of Manchester to Brussels and to Paris.
So, Rohit, what is the latest then on the investigation?
Well, we and investigators, of course, are learning a little more about the final hours, the final journey of this attacker. US intelligence officials are now indicating that they believe that he travelled from London to Manchester and that he used the train. Now, it appears that he spent a great deal of his life going between those two cities. He was born in Manchester. His parents, however, had spent some time living in London after they moved from Libya, and of course the police will be talking to all sorts of people in both of those cities because they want to work out who his influences were, who his friends were, and I think that they will be surprised if they concluded that this device of such sophistication was made entirely by himself with no outside influence.
All right, Rohit Khatri, thank you very much indeed. OK, still to come on the ITV Evening News. The Queen holds a minute's silence in memory of those killed in Manchester. And the spirit of this city. The city unites to help those caught up in the attack.
Just because I'm homeless, it doesn't mean that I haven't got a heart and I'm not human still, you know what I mean?
Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. And welcome back to Manchester, where the emergency services have been praised for their brave response to last night's terror attack. 59 people were injured, some of them seriously. Our health editor Rachel Younger is at Manchester Royal Infirmary, one of the 8 hospitals treating the injured. So, Rachel, how have the emergency teams been responding today?
Well, we have had an update on the number of patients being treated in hospitals. I understand from 2 of the 8 that you mentioned that they have been able to discharge some patients. I'm afraid I can't give you an exact figure on that. What I can tell you is that while everybody who could was trying to get out of the Manchester Arena last night, paramedics from across the city were rushing in. 60 ambulances in total, some of them with very specialised medical teams on board, all of them doing their utmost to try and stabilise the most badly injured, to get them to hospital as soon as they could. Doctors and nurses working around the clock at each of those hospitals. We know that there were at least 12 under-16s amongst the most badly injured brought in. We know too that some of the victims had to be rushed straight into operating theatres last night. And as the chief of Manchester's hospitals told me a little earlier, today, some of them are still fighting for their lives.
Clearly, there are a number of individuals who have, very, very serious injuries and are requiring intensive care, and people who are going to be in hospital for a long time in terms of that treatment.
So an incredibly difficult time for those who've been injured and their families. But we see too that at the very worst of times in Manchester, we have seen the very best of the city's NHS and its staff.
Rachel Younger at Manchester Royal Infirmary, thank you. Well, tributes have been paid from right across the world to those caught up in this terrible attack. The Queen held a minute's silence at a Buckingham Palace garden party today. Earlier, she praised the people of Manchester for their humanity and their compassion. In Albert Square, just a short distance from where I'm standing here, thousands of people are holding a vigil tonight, and Ben Chapman is there for us. So, Ben, what is the message that you're getting from the people there?
Well, what we've witnessed here over the last hour or so has been incredibly moving. A quite staggering number of people, many of whom are still here some 20 minutes after the vigil finished. People of all ages, races and faiths, determined not to let the violence and hatred of last night define them and their city. Rather, as one of the speakers on the stage put it, to defy the terrorists through mutual respect. People came here to hear what people on the stage, the community and political leaders had to say, for sure, but I think moreover they came just to be together, to express that solidarity. There was an impeccably observed minute's silence, an enormous cheer for the emergency services, a poem to celebrate this city. Many people were carrying banners saying simply, "I love Manchester." And I think if there's one thing which sums up the mood in the city tonight, it was written on the pavement on the edge of this square, and it says, "We are grieving today, but we are strong."
Ben Chapman in Albert Square here in Manchester, thank you. Well, this city witnessed the very worst of humanity last night, but it also brought out the best in people here. Cabbies turned off their meters and residents offered up their spare rooms, and a homeless man described how he helped to treat injured children at the scene. Damon Green reports on the spirit of Manchester.
Last night's party may have ended in grief and in distress, in suffering and in shock, but this is a city which has always found a way to cope with any hardship.
We were trying to get our heads down on that doorway there.
Steve's homeless. He sleeps in the shelter of the Manchester Arena. Last night's explosion woke him. Homeless or not, he's a Mancunian, and he had to help.
Just because I'm homeless, it doesn't mean that I haven't got a heart and I'm not human still, you know what I mean? They needed the help. I'd like to think someone would come and help me if I needed the help. Obviously, when we've seen children like that as well with blood, and we were having to pull nails out of their arms and stuff, and a couple out of this little girl's face. I mean, there's a lot of good people in Manchester that do help the homeless out and help us out, you know what I mean? So, obviously, we've got to give a little bit back as well, and that's why we stayed to help last night.
In 100 small ways, the people of this city have tried to show their goodwill and carry on living, handing out free cups of tea or queuing up to give blood. They opened their hearts and their homes. These girls from London had nowhere to stay, just 2 of the hundreds put up for free.
Someone let you stay in their hotel room last night. What does it mean to you?
A lot.
Yeah,
like,
it does mean
that.
Because otherwise we would have been stranded.
We would have been stranded outside here, and I couldn't have dealt with that.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Bob's a Manchester cabbie, one of dozens who went on the road last night just to give free rides to those stranded by the attack.
You think you got us down, we're not. We're a proud people, we're a proud bunch of northern people. And we'll help each other out when time gets tough. When times do get tough, we help each other out, and that's the Mancunian spirit.
We are Manchester, we will stay strong, we will grow, and we'll be there for each other.
Whatever the faith, whatever the background, its buildings can be bombed, its people can be hurt, but while there's a single Mancunian left, the city spirit can never be broken. Damon Green, ITV News, in Manchester.
And that is all from this proud city where a moment of horror has changed many lives forever. It hurt the people of Manchester, but they're determined that the terrorists will not win. Tom Bradby's here at 10, but from me and all the team here in Manchester and back in London. Bye-bye.